Don't compromise your creative vision to get into a festival. Keep your creative integrity. Let's talk about this. Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome, Johnny here. Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about film festivals. I've spoken about this subject a long time, but there's always different angles to take on these subjects, and there's endless conversations you can have about getting into a film festival and creating a film festival. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well out there. It is Friday. We are getting ready for the weekend, a long weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Hope you're going to be spending it with people that you love and enjoy it and do something that maybe you thought about doing, but you just haven't gotten around to it. If it's a creative thing, get your camera out, get your start writing, get it all out. Do it this weekend. It's a long weekend. You might have a little bit of time to kind of break away and kind of do the things that you love to do. All right, so we're gonna dive in here. One of the things that I've noticed on a lot of festivals is that the more darker the con you know the more darker the film is, or the more obscure, or it seems to get people seem to like that. It seems to, and I don't know if it's the majority of the viewers, the entertainment people, because if you look at the top movies, of all time, they're not like that at all, right? ETs and Star Wars and all these great films of the past that are still ruling things, like Titanic. Right now we got the new Mission Impossible film coming out, and all those types of action films. Those are the ones that tend to people seem to go to a lot, right? They seem to be the popular ones. And yet, when you go to a festival, what you see sort of like a darker, not all of them, but even my last film was sort of a, you know, not I wouldn't call it a sad film. It had a, I don't like to do I don't write that way. I don't think in that way. So I think with a lot of conflicts, and then I think of resolutions. Call me crazy, and maybe the resolution is not the right one, but it is a resolution nevertheless. And so it's that's how I put it out there. But when you go out there and you see a lot of festivals and you see a lot of films and festivals, you get the idea that the darker the film, the more attention it's going to get. And so when you're writing and you're creating stuff, it could be a bit of a trap to get you to start thinking, oh, maybe I should start writing something darker and about, the dark underworld of prostitution and drugs and you know, uh, murder, whatever the case may be. Uh, and then you start thinking with that. Then it's not your own creative process, right? It's you're creating something based on what you think is what is being looked for. So it's not really art, is more commerce, right? It's more sales. It's more like, what will people buy? Will they buy more chocolate chips or oatmeal? That's commerce. That's not necessarily the creative process in its original state, right? So getting into a film festival without compromising your creative vision starts with crafting a clear and authentic story. Festivals often seek fresh perspectives and emotionally engaging narratives, so staying true to your voice is your biggest asset. Filmmakers sometimes try to mold their projects to fit perceived festival trends, but this can dilute originality. Instead, focus on your core message and ensure every element, from script to direct, reflects your intent. Authenticity resonates more deeply with both audiences and festival programmers. So, and sometimes you'll have festival trends. It'll be sometimes a lot of it'll be comedy stuff. It'll be darker stuff, and you kind of feel it going in, and then you say, okay, well, maybe next year I'm going to make this, and then that trend kind of holds on for maybe another season or another year, and then it kind of changes because a film comes out that's an original idea, right? And then that film inspires others to kind of go in that direction, and that's where the trends kind of come in, right? It's somebody generally is original and has a fresh perspective on a narrative, on an original narrative, and then they go out and they put that together, and then that inspires others to try to take that same type of narrative, or try to take that narrative and try to put their own twist on it. And that's usually what happens. Now, in order to avoid that, you have to sit down and ask yourself, and this is something that I do quite often: why did I ever want to do this? Right? Because this is not an easy thing. Filmmaking, art in general, music, dance, art, painters, writers, screenplay writers and playwrights. And I mean, it's not easy. If it were easy, I mean, everybody'd be doing it, right? Because it's a fun thing to do. But it's not easy. That's why we have so many people that give up, because you're right to give up. It is an insane industry. So it's not nobody's going to blame somebody for giving up. You have to have a certain level of delusion, a certain level of insanity, and you have to love it to the degree that you don't care about the failure part. You don't care how long it takes to do certain things or to get projects off the air. It's just not doesn't come into your, like, I do this show, and sometimes I'll get like 100 views, sometimes I get no views. you know I still do it because I feel it's a passion for me to get these shows out and to communicate with an audience. And maybe it's my fault. I'm just not communicating properly. I'm not working the industry correctly. I'm not getting the attention because my communication is off, or maybe I'm focused on something else that I should be maybe twisting that, shifting that focus onto something else. I don't know. But I do know one thing, is that I'm going to keep doing them. That much I do know. And so that, whatever you want to call it, delusion or insanity, or maybe let's just call it passion and love of the art and love of communicating and love of trying to get your message across. I'll say it's those things rather than to say it's the delusion, right? But there is a certain level of passion and love that you have in order to keep on it and to keep going. So when you get into a situation where it's a festival, and these festivals are really focusing on this type of dark, uh, messaging, whether it's having to do with, like I said, the underworld, the drugs and prostitution. The last film, Honora, was a small independent film, right? But it was a dark film, and did really well. A lot of the films, if you look at them, they all had dark messaging. They weren't. You could have a conflict. If you look at my film, and on that day, it went to a lot of festivals. It did really well, but it was not a dark film. It had a message of a real conflict. It had real conflict, meaning a lot of people can relate to being at a job that you don't like, and the story is about Robert, who's at a dead-end job, and on his last day before he retires, after 30 years of being in this position, he decides to kind of let the office know what his true thoughts are, because he's been pushed a little bit. That last day, he just got pushed just enough to kind of let it all fly on that last day, right? Um, but that's a real thing. People do go through that. So it's not really dark. It's sort of like having to do with a life moment. We all think about that. What if I stayed at that job? Or what if I stay at this current job that I'm in, and I stay there for 30 years, and then I go and I have to retire from here, and I get a little gold watch, or if you're lucky, and a little pension. and then you're off, and you think, well, man, I wanted to do these things, I wanted to do this, but I got tied into this job, and and so that's a more of a real, those types of stories I like to tell because they can relate to that, and the darker ones is sort of exposing something to the average person that maybe we're not aware of. Now I grew up in the South Bronx, so I'm very aware of drugs. I'm very aware of prostitution. I'm very aware of shootings and violence and gangs and stuff like that. I grew up in that environment, seeing that. So maybe that has something to do with the reason why those films don't really resonate to me for me because I don't I've experienced those things. I've actually seen them firsthand. I grew up in that, and it's nothing that really makes me, oh wow, I mean, and I'm sure they're great films. I mean, Honora was a great film, but um it was a great performances. But it was a subject that I was like not that interested in. It's not. You want to see something that is going to make you, at the edge of your seat. It's going to make you not know, right? And all the films, it's really hard to get to that point, right? You start thinking of like the Mission Impossible films, right? They're fun, super fun. They're entertainment. There's a lot of actions. Tom Cruise doing the crazy stunts and all. It's a wonderful, wonderful franchise. But going in, what you're pretty much going to see a action packed, filled, and that's what you're going in for seeing. So it's not going to surprise you, right? And excuse me. This is usually the first time I talk in the day when I'm here on live. It's the first words. I try to say some words before I go live, like testing, testing, hello, hello. But then you start talking for a little bit of time, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I haven't spoken really today. But when you go into these films, you kind of know. You go into a Marvel movie, you understand what's happening. It's going to be a lot of flying, a lot of buildings being broken up, a lot of insurance companies having to start getting ready because the Avengers were in town and it destroyed half the city. That's part of what you're expecting. So combining that, having something that maybe people are not going to expect. I had a couple of films, one called Tracy on the Bench that had I thought was an interesting ending, surprising. You can watch all these, by the way, on my website, johnhenrysoto.com. Just go to my film section and you can watch these films. Another one called Stabbed, which I thought had a really interesting conclusion. These were all real life situations that resolved in a more unique way than you would have thought. Same thing with And on That Day. Usually people, what do they do when they retire? They have a little party and they go home. And the next day they don't wake up early, right? Well, the next day usually it's a Saturday. But on that Monday morning, they're not getting dressed to go to work, and that's an interesting story to me. That Monday morning, that week, that first week. See that to me is what it's more interesting is that first week of retirement. What's that like? And do you have any conflicts in that? Is there, if you're married, now your wife's seeing you every day. You've been gone all day long. Now you're there every day. How is that? Have you been prepared for that? Is it even wanted? Is it going to put a strain on the marriage now that you're in your whatever people retire at these days, 65, whatever. I'm never retiring, so I don't know I'll never know what that's like. But 65 years old, I think you could retire a little bit earlier now. I think 62 or 63 or something like that. But 60 is pretty young nowadays. 62. I mean, Tom Cruise is 62. He's like, hanging off of airplanes. So it's a different era now, right? Our bodies, we know a little bit more about nutrition. We know a little bit about supplements. We know about working out. We know certain things that can get our bodies healthier and live longer. Medicine is better as well. So all these things combined will give us another 30 years after you retire, 30, maybe 40 years. You can live to 100 nowadays. So that's a long time. Are you prepared for that next, moment? Now, a lot of people, when they retire, they don't do well physically. They get sick because they're home now. They're used to being productive. Now they're not productive. So all those things. Anyway, that's a story that I was just thinking about. That had nothing to do with the episode, but I digressed there for a second. So But strategic planning plays a key role in both making the movie you want and getting it into festivals. Before production even begins, research festivals that align with your genre, theme, or style. Some festivals are more experimental, others lean towards social impact, right? And some highlight genre specific work like horror or animation. Tailor your submission plan accordingly while keeping your film's integrity, your film's creative integrity intact. Budget time and money for festival submissions, marketing materials, and possibly even re edits for different versions. But don't let those considerations override your vision. See, that's the key thing. You don't want to let those changes and those submissions into festivals that are more genre focused change your considerations over your vision. You don't want that. You want to be able to continue to have exactly what you came up with. Your original idea is really the reason why you sat down to write it, right? I mean, that is the point. That is the whole point. It, it reminds me of Woody Allen on his first film that he wrote was Hello Pussycat, something like that, or yeah, something like that. What's New Pussycat? That's what it was called. And he wrote the script, and it was a Hollywood film, and the studio butchered it. They said they changed all these things around. And he vowed never to make a film again. He said, "I'm never making a film again." They came to him and said, "Hey, would you do another film?" He said, "No, I will not do another film." They said, "What would it take you to do another film?" He said, "Leave me $200 in a brown paper bag and walk away, and I'll give you a film in 3 months." He goes, "Well, can we have somebody look at it and check and edit?" And do, no, I will hand you a film. When it is done, I will hand it to you, and that is the film. Take it or leave it. And they said, fine, we'll give you the money. And it went really well. And he's never had anybody edit any of his work except him and his editor. They sit there and they put it together the way he wants to put it together with the music he wants to put, making no type of taking no suggestions from anyone. And he's made 50 films that way, you know, 50, one a year for 50 years, except for during COVID. There was a lot, obviously nothing was happening during that time. But isn't that crazy? Because it's you get you had your original vision and then you have other eyes. It's even difficult sometimes with your team. When you're working on a vision, somebody may be like, hey, why don't you do this? And you have to be aware enough to know, like, hey, that's a good idea, let's do that, or that changes my vision. And you have to, there's a fine line there sometimes, so you have to be very, very you have to be very, very aware of what people are presenting to you. Networking and presentation are the final pieces of the puzzle. Attend festivals even before your film is finished to meet programmers, filmmakers, and audiences. Build relationships and understand what different festivals value. When your film is ready, make sure your submission package, including the trailer, synopsis, and press kit, tells a compelling story about why your film matters. The key is to position your film in a way that aligns with each festival's mission without altering the soul of your story. With the right balance of strategy and sincerity, you can find the perfect home for your film while staying true to your art. And that is the key factor, is you want to be able to stay true to your art, not give in to the trends. Take suggestions that you think will enhance your your original narrative project, but not change the direction of where it was going. See, that's the thing. And sometimes when you're on set, there are other creatives on there, and they're wonderful creatives. And they may have an idea that in their minds, it's the perfect idea to get your film off of what you were talking about into a new thing, because I think this is more interesting. Well, that's more interesting to them. It's not necessarily more interesting to you. So you have to make sure that you can continue moving forward and not take any uh the criticisms, because you didn't take, your film is your film. And if you create your film and you put it out there and it doesn't do well, then it's on you and it's okay. But if you take all these suggestions and you change your film around and then you put it out and it doesn't do well, now you're going to look around and say, well, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. I should have, there's all these other shoulda, coulda, woulda things that come up because you weren't following your own vision. You weren't following your own, uh, uh, your own passion. The story that you had envisioned from the beginning got lost. So another thing is when you're dealing with a lot of, let's say you do actually take a lot of those suggestions and you listen, you pick the right things and you put it together and the film does really, really well. Well, now you realize that you have a collaborative ability. You have that. You want to use that. You want to use those same people that helped you guide that. Because they obviously can see your vision enough to enhance it. They know they're not going to move you away. So you have to really stay in tune with what it is you're doing and put a team together, for your project that understands that and have meetings about this too. You don't have to like just show up on set and here's my movie. Have a meeting about it. Talk about it to them. Talk to your crew and say, all right, guys, this is my film. I want to stick to as much to this narrative as possible, but I'm always willing to take suggestions and ideas. If it's a good idea, I will go with it. If it's not, if it's a good idea that may be good, but not for my film, I will tell you and we will move on. So there's no hard feelings here. There's no there's nothing personal on anyone. It's just the way I feel about the project I'm trying to put out there. And is everybody okay with that? All right, let's clap it up. Let's get out there and let's make some magic, right? And that's a conversation that you should have with your crew at all times. I did that for everything, even though I'll have a crew of 3 people, like an actor and 2 crew. I'm having that conversation. I'll take suggestions, but we have to keep the story going in the direction that it was going. It has to resolve to the arc that you created. It has to resolve there. That's the key thing. All right, friends. I want to thank you so much for tuning in this morning. It is always a pleasure to come here and talk about these subjects that I'm very passionate about. And I'm working on getting out there a lot more. It's just like, when I talk about these subjects, it's not like I'm not practicing what I preach. I want to get out there and do way more projects that I'm involved in right now. I have one film that I just finished writing that I'm ready to shoot. My last film is out of the festival circuit since last year. So it's been already a year that I haven't had a film in anything. So I need to start getting rocking and rolling here. I'm in Nashville now, so it's a little bit more challenging. My last film was shot in New Jersey, where I had already a team of people and actors and had access here in Nashville. I don't have that yet, but I am working on all that. So I'm out there with y'all working on this and trying to put these things together, and I'm very excited about it. And please message me if you have any questions, if you need anything, if you need any, if you have, I don't know, whatever it is, message me, John at jhstalentmanagement.com, John at jhstalentmanagement.com. All right, friends, have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful holiday, long weekend with your family. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you all Monday morning, and I will see you Sunday night for my other show, my live show about music, and that'll be Sunday night. But I will see you here Monday morning at the same time here. Take care. God bless you all. And as always, peace.